Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com's podcast, Season 9, Episode 13. I'm John DiCarlo, the editor of OurScoop.com, joined by Declan Landis and Johnny Zwizlak. And yes, I am fully aware that last week I introed the pod by saying it was Season 9, Episode 13, but it really should have been Season 9, Episode 12. That's on me. It's definitely on me. So we will be going through famous. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do famous number 12s this week coming out of the chute because we missed the 12s last week. But we went through the 13s with Diane Richardson. So again, clerical error on my part. I apologize to our OurScoop.com Scoop listening community. The numbers were great on last week's podcast. Big thank you again to Diane Richardson. Really, really cool conversation that we had with her. It was very enjoyable. We have a lot of basketball to talk about this week. Some football as well. Temple's back in the win column. Now they face USF down in Tampa this weekend. The Temple men have a game on the road Friday night against Navy in the Veterans Classic. Johnny Zwizlak will be covering that for us. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon before the Temple women take on Georgetown, so you guys are probably going to be listening this Friday morning, so we won't preview that game because it's going to be old news by that point. But and we have an interview with Ari Rosenfeld from Elite High School Scouting. We had promised that to you guys for, I believe, a couple weeks now. He's going to talk to us about Dillon, Battie, and Aiden Tobiason, both of whom signed their national letters of intent today. Those guys are officially in the books for Temple now, and we'll ask them about a lot of the 2025 players we asked them about before, just updates on that, along with a couple of players from the 2026 class. So we have a really, really fun show ahead for you guys. The Scoop, as always, brought to you guys by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. It's greenspans-law.com. Before we even get to the famous number 12s, let's wish a very happy birthday to our very own Johnny Zwizlak.
Yay! Thank you.
Happy birthday, buddy.
I appreciate it.
If I had my old setup, I'd give you the round of applause.
How old are you now?
You're
20?
right.
21.
You're so right.
Oh, this is your 21st birthday.
Yeah, it's 21st birthday.
All right. Be safe, be smart, be responsible in whatever you do in celebrating.
I will. No promises.
But you said and you know what I gave Johnny, not knowing it was his birthday today. Johnny is covering the Temple women's basketball game for us tonight, so I'm making him work on his birthday. So.
No, it's no worries.
This guy's a grinder. He really is. You know.
I try.
Yeah, Johnny. Do you reflect upon your life at this point? Do you
see? I think.
Declan, let him answer the question.
Last night, I kind of went through a mini midlife crisis. It was
it's nowhere near a midlife
crisis.
crisis.
A quarter life crisis is probably a better example because I realized there's nothing to look forward to now. Like after 21,
it's completely
like,
false. Completely,
but it's also
completely
so
and
much,
utterly false.
So much.
You have
is
so much to
unlocked
look
now.
forward to
Because I can actually gamble. I can actually legally buy a drink.
What?
Which is awesome. But also, there's no milestones anymore. Like
there are plenty of milestones ahead for you.
Is there?
Yes, you have so much stuff to look forward to. You're too young to be saying stuff like that.
That's fair, probably.
Well, Declan and I will both give you a hug after we record.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You have plenty of milestones ahead.
Yeah.
So literally last night you were sitting there and having a quarter life crisis?
Is this before or after you were playing Fortnite?
In the middle of it. It was. I wouldn't say it was a crisis. It was more like a. For so long, I was I'd look forward to it, and then when it actually came, it was like, oh, now what? It was one of those kind of things.
And then when you go out to a bar now, you can be like, okay, this is the thrill that wears off very quickly, so you'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
You've got a bright career, bright future ahead of you. Don't get down on yourself now.
Attaboy.
I appreciate that, John.
Yeah,
I needed the pep talk.
Any birthday plans this weekend?
Yeah,
because you're working. You're working tonight. You're covering the women's game for us tonight. You're covering the men's game for us at Navy tomorrow night.
Yeah.
We've got football Saturday. Another women's basketball game Saturday.
Yeah.
Volleyball as well. That's more of a TTN thing, but
yeah. Huh. I think next week my dad's gonna come up and we're gonna go to the live casino.
There you
down
go.
in South Philly. So I think
There
that's
you go.
my birthday plan.
There you go. Declan, did you get Johnny anything for his birthday?
Yeah, I rented him a tux for next weekend so he could look like James Bond.
Really?
Did you really?
No.
You got me all excited for a second.
We, Johnny had been upset about his laptop charger, so Rymir and I went 50-50, and we paid for his laptop
That's very
charger.
Sweet. That's nice.
Which you did not need to do. But
You
I
guys are a
much
very, very
appreciate it.
thoughtful bunch.
We try to be,
Yes.
and we got a couple other things up the sleeve that I will not
So
be
maybe they are
divulging
renting the
just yet.
tuxedo for you.
Yeah,
Maybe he did.
Maybe.
Would you?
But we do have a couple things in store.
Can I ask a James Bond question, or will this just fall upon deaf ears? Do you know the actors who have played James Bond, or not really?
I know a couple.
No.
Would he be a Daniel Craig? Would he be a Roger Moore? Would he be
Ooh.
a
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan? Would he be a Timothy Dalton? T-Dalt?
Who's the
Roger
guy?
Moore?
Roger Moore was kind of like the goofier guy, right? He was kind of like he was a little sillier. Wasn't there a James Bond that was like a little sillier?
Roger Moore silly? I don't know.
I've never seen
Roger
the
Moore
movies.
was in,
I
like,
just
Beautiful
knew
Kill.
things I've heard through the grapevine.
Timothy Dalton, I think, just did like 2 movies. They made a Timothy Dalton reference in I Love You, Man when he was trying on
Yes.
tuxedos. He's like,
T-Dalt.
T-Dalt. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I had no idea what it was saying, and I wouldn't have known unless you had pointed it out. But
Yeah. Johnny, any other thoughts on your birthday before we get down to business and work here?
No. I think you guys touched all the bases.
You're
James
like
Bond.
Robin in the Barry. Declan was talking about the Barry Gibb talk show before.
yes,
He's now Robin Gibb. Gibb. Robin, do you have anything to add? No, I don't.
no, I
I
don't.
don't.
I know.
Are we keeping that in?
I will.
There we go. That's incredible.
I thought it was funny.
Incredible.
Very
Incredible
funny.
stuff.
Thank you.
All right, since we skipped over it last week, famous number 12s, guys.
There are a lot of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
A lot of
NFL.
quarterbacks. Maybe the greatest point guard of all time. Maybe.
Oh, well, that's up for.
It's up for debate,
Up for
for sure,
debate.
yeah. At least the greatest backup point guard of all time.
I'm gonna go one that you guys probably aren't thinking about. Andrew Luck. He wore number 12.
we were just
with the
talking about him
Yeah.
earlier today.
We
Yeah.
were, yeah.
We were. It's good poll. I'm going to go TJ McConnell.
How there was
That's
never
who
a
you were
doubt.
talking
There was
about?
never a doubt that he.
That's who you were talking about?
I thought you were talking about.
Well, you said greatest
Stockton.
point guard of all time. John Stockton's gotten a little weird recently.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick him.
Another time. Another
would not pick
conversation for
him.
another time.
Yeah, TJ McConnell.
Yeah,
Could
when
come
you
back
said,
to the
once you
Sixers.
said famous backup point guard, I was like, who's he talking about?
Yeah, TJ McConnell.
TJ McConnell.
Yep.
From where?
Pittsburgh, right outside.
Yeah.
Do you know every little fact about TJ McConnell?
No, I just remember we had this conversation.
Where did he
before.
start his college career?
Was not Arizona. I don't remember.
Duquesne.
Duquesne.
You don't know
that was on the
everything
tip of
about
my
him.
tongue. No, I just said I didn't. I just enjoy his
You
play.
did. You did. It's my fault.
Active listening. It's okay.
Came down way too hard on you in that one.
You got one, John?
I mean, yeah, there's several. I mean, like, there's Terry Bradshaw. Brady's the obvious one.
I was just gonna say Eli Manning's little brother, Tom Brady.
Oh, his little brother. As you said, Johnny, a lot of quarterbacks. Quiz time. We'll do a few quiz questions here. Played for the Bills.
Jim Kelly.
There we go.
My cousin will be really proud of that. My mom as well.
Guaranteed to win.
Oh, Joe Namath.
There we go.
Boom.
Wow.
Come on, catch up.
According to this list I'm looking at, there is a NASCAR driver who wore number 12.
I would never.
There probably was. Give me the initials.
B.A.
Oh, I got nothing.
Bobby Allison.
No. I'm sure my dad's disappointed in me right now.
You're making some people proud and disappointing some other people.
It's a cycle.
One that never ends.
Oh, Ken! I forgot about Ken Stabler. He was my dad's favorite quarterback. My dad loved Ken Stabler. I was going through some stuff of my dad's last night, and he has a couple of autographed Ken Stabler pictures.
Oh, no way.
Oh.
That's
Yep.
so cool.
Yeah. Another famous quarterback plays for the most hated team in Philadelphia, or a team that everyone in Philadelphia hates. I phrased that poorly.
So he plays on the Cowboys. Oh,
Yeah.
Romo. No, Romo didn't.
Romo
wear 12.
was
He wore
9.
He wore
No,
9.
think back before that.
Troy Aikman, but he didn't wear 12.
No, older than that. Before you were born. Before I was
Older
born.
than that.
Oh,
That's tough.
you're
The
going.
guy that went to Navy.
Yes, you're on the right track. Yes, that's him. Just
what
use
the hell is his
name.
name?
Oh, I can't think.
Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach. He was the first Hail Mary. That was
Yeah.
the Hail Mary pass.
Yes.
Roger Staubach.
Another Another number 12.
Oh, I've got, let me
Let me finish what I was
Really narrows
saying.
it down.
This guy thinks he knows everything about the medical community.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
My mind went to Joe Rogan, which
Well,
not
close.
far off. Not
Close.
far off.
Close. Close. Yeah. There you have it.
Good stuff, guys.
Good stuff.
Great segment.
Great segment.
Great segment.
Woo.
Really brought it today.
All right. We promised you guys a conversation with Ari Rosenfeld from Elite High School Scouting. We have him here on the Scoop. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Good, man. How about you?
Good.
It's always
Doing
a pleasure
well.
to be on.
Doing well. Is that a what T-shirt are you wearing there?
Chicago Sky.
Little Chicago Sky T-shirt. That's pretty
Perfect.
sweet.
Repping the north a little bit for Kalia
Yeah.
Copper.
Where's Bo?
Bo's upstairs. He's not welcome down here. We'll throw off the recording.
Really?
I mean, he can start going off at any second.
That'd be great. Some
Yeah.
chaos on the Scoop. No, I appreciate you being on, buddy. A good recruiting week for Temple last week, and then Dillon, Battie, and Aiden, Tobiason Temple just announced today that they officially signed their national letters of intent. So we got some good questions for you here. Again, you know this stuff as well as anybody. We'll start with Dillon Battie, the legacy recruit from Lancaster High School down in Texas. Written about him. I had a chance to catch up with him when he committed, but how often did you get to see him this summer? What are your thoughts on Dillon? I know he's not the same player his dad was. Derek was more of a true post player, a little bigger. Not to say that Dillon can't grow into his body more, but tell listeners about what you've seen from Dillon Battie.
Yeah, so he was a kid I had heard about all throughout his previous junior high school season. Actually thought that I'd been mistold that he was Tony Battie's son, who I remembered from the Sixers.
Right.
And I've just been hearing really good things, but never even really got a chance to sit down and see film on him.
Mm-hmm.
From last season. So kind of went into this AAU season seeing him with a pretty blank slate, not knowing exactly what to expect, but just knowing I've been told, there's a pretty good player, has some upside, has some good bloodlines. Once I obviously found out the Temple connection, being from where I'm from, was even more intrigued. So no, I mean, what you're getting first and foremost, I mean, he's a genuinely elite athlete, and that's at any level he could play at. High major level. You could put him on an NBA court right now, and he'd probably be an above average, at least, athlete as it stands today. So just that physical specimen walking into the AAC, you don't see every day. Certainly not. For Temple, for it to be a kid from Texas is a nice coup rather than it being a backyard kid. And then I honestly, I mean, his skill set is still developing, but his feel for the game is impressive, and his motor is really impressive. And when you combine the feel and the motor with the elite athleticism, the skill set's a lot easier to develop into college. He's got a good baseline as a jump shooter. Yeah, really, really versatile and active defensively. So there's just a lot of different things you can do with him. Kind of a positionless player, and especially at the level that he's going to be going to, where he's, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head if there'll be a better athlete in the conference. No, for real. I mean, and he could walk into the league like that from day one. So it's exciting to think about. He's a guy that I think can make an impact right away with the athleticism, with the motor. And even if he's just making some standstill shots or some catch and shoot shots, there's an upside there to continue to develop a lot more than that into college.
I want to ask you about Aiden Tobiason, who I know you have been really, really high on. You gave me a great quote for the story from when Aiden committed. Again, give people just an overview of his game. I have a few questions for you here about Aiden because of just, you said like there's the uniqueness of like there aren't too many true sleepers anymore. You had been high on Aiden for a while. So tell our listeners what Temple is getting in Aiden Tobiason.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I wish I could say for a while. I guess I'll take some credit, like relatively speaking, but I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think I said it for your story. I mean, he's just like as big of a late bloomer hidden gem as you'll see in an area that gets covered as much as ours does. I mean, it's probably as big as a blow up as I can remember, probably since Colin Gillespie in the area in that short of a time.
You say that because of like it was initially D2 offers and then
yeah, I mean,
blew up.
I say that, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but like I don't think many people, if anybody knows, just at least knows of more kids in this area than I do, regardless of how good they are or not, or what I know or don't know. I just know who players are.
Right.
And I had no idea this kid existed before June. For him to have been in Wilmington, Delaware, in my backyard for, he'd been at St. Elizabeth's all 4 years of high school. This is 4th year. From that to signing to Temple a few months later, and me thinking it's not only justified but maybe a steal. I don't know if I'll see something like that again. Hopefully if I'm good at my job, I won't, because I found him a little bit before then. But no, I mean, so just talk about his game first. Yeah, I mean, Aiden's probably about almost 6'5" now.
Mhm.
It's one of those where if he's not 6'5" now, I feel almost good saying he'll be 6'5" by the time he gets to campus with the rate he's been growing, physically growing. Super, super long. I mean, and in a way that just really sticks out just before he even does anything on the court. And just has this really innate feel for the game for a guy who hasn't necessarily played at super high levels or with a lot of great players. He just has a knack for where to be on the court, whether that's playing with the ball in his hands, whether that's playing off the ball, off of other guys. For his high school, especially with his size now, he'll even play some in the post, and just has this versatility and this real knack for and joy for making the right play. Which at his size and with the part I haven't touched on, with his ability to shoot the ball at a really high level, I mean, it's just a really easy player to build around. So you look at it as somebody who could maybe develop into a lead guard with his feel for the game and his IQ. But he also, with his shot making and his length, could play as high up as probably the three at a level that, like Temple's, where you see multi guard lineups all throughout college basketball. So again, it's another one similar to Dillon, where he has some things that he can bring to the table right away, potentially, with just the length and the shot making. His body's not quite there in the way that Dillon's is, and just the experience level isn't there. But it's really the long term markers for development are all there, of a kid who just has zero bad habits, has just been this sponge. Even in the time since I've been watching him since June, he's gotten markedly better. And that player then is a markedly better one than the one I went back and watched on film from his junior season. So just the progressions that he's stacking with the physical tools and just like the cleanness of his skill set already. It's a really exciting get, especially like I said, for a kid that nobody ever heard of 5-6 months ago, who was, first Division I offer was in September, I think, from Sacred Heart. I think if you ask
Delaware, Dell State.
I think Delaware, Dell State, Sacred Heart was his first one.
Yeah.
Vermont ended up and did a little bit with them. I think ultimately in the end it really came down to Temple and Delaware. And if and it was a kid too. If Temple hadn't pulled the trigger, I think that was still going to sign to Delaware and commit early and wasn't going to string the process out. So that's always. I mean, it was a very old school and in a lot of ways very refreshing evaluation and subsequent recruitment to watch unfold, because it doesn't really happen much that way anymore.
Had he chosen to prolong his recruitment and wait till the spring, you think more offers would have piled in for him?
Yeah, I mean, if this were 3-4 years ago, I would have just more with less hesitancy said yes, absolutely. Just with the nature of spring recruiting now being so weird and so portal heavy, I think that's the only reason that I say Temple might have gotten lucky and been able to avoid that had it played into the spring. And it's another one too. Like if this kid played in the Philly Catholic League, I'd say not a chance. The fact that he's down in Delaware, like a little bit off the beaten path still, they might have had a chance, but I mean, I can just put it from where I sit for my job. Each time that I saw him, my grade on him was only going up and up, to where, if it lingered into the season, I know I was calling Power 5 coaches to at least go take a look at this kid if they were still looking at guards. I think there's every chance that we look up in 2-3 years and he's a kid that we look back on. I was like, oh, he probably should have been at that level. In today's day and age, for Temple's sake, they hope that that doesn't mean that he gets a wandering eye. And obviously, it's a long way between now and then for him to get there. But yeah, no, I mean, it's one just with his length, the shot making, the fact his team's going to win, and then some of the stuff he's starting to do athletically. That's what I haven't mentioned either. I think some tape would have gotten out, and there was enough buzz going into the season already to have had enough low and mid-major offers to his name that I think you probably would have seen at least some heavy sniffs from some Power 5 throughout this winter.
When I talked to Aiden, he said that he felt like his role model elite AAU team, they don't typically get a lot of the visibility as some of the other AAU teams out there, and he seemed pretty self-aware of that. Was that part of, like, in your estimation, the intersection of like everything breaking right for Temple in terms of how, again, when people look at his offer sheet, someone who's never seen him play before is going to say, okay, well, Temple should be out recruiting all these programs, but is that him playing on like a less of a high profile AAU team? Did that play into this, like, of him being a true sleeper?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because if I don't know if you've ever walked into Spooky Nook or for anybody who has, I mean, where a lot of like the hoop group tournaments are over the summertime, a lot of the summer AAU recruiting gets done, at least on a local level, not the sneaker circuit level. There's like there's 10 main wooden courts, and then there's another group of like 4 or 5 kind of sport courts that are all kind of the main section. And then there's like 18 other back courts that are maybe like a half mile away where all the action is and where all the coaches are going to be. And the way it breaks down is like there's obviously the sneaker circuit level teams that are out on their national tours, and then all these event companies have their own circuits. Like Hoop Group has a circuit now. role model elite's not on the hoop group circuit. So
Right.
they're and this is with all, I mean, Kevin Murray runs, I don't want to make it seem like they're a rinky dink program.
Mhm.
They do a really good job. It's just they're tucked away in the back. First, you had to know Aiden existed by July, which not everyone did, and you had to really be willing to go off the beaten path and go take a look at them. And to people's credit, there were some that were, like, mostly Division II coaches and a few low major Division I coaches. But yeah, I mean, it's not even if you were playing on a circuit, but if you were just playing on one of the marquee hoop group teams, playing on court 1 instead of on court 19, things could have looked a lot differently. And especially just for a kid who was so open to signing. I mean, wasn't a kid who was holding out for the best offer or anything like that. I mean, he just might have been signed to a low major Division I school before Temple even had a chance to know about him or see him. So yeah, just the fact that he and again, I think he's a kid who also got better from July until September. And people might think it sounds crazy, but that happens where I do think he was a better player by the time Temple even came and saw him. So I think it worked for his benefit and it worked for theirs. By the time they came in to see him, he was ready to be seen by that level. And there was still really nothing that had gotten done with him from anybody yet. I mean, Temple was in there before, physically in there to see him before his first offer had come in. So at that point, it's an even playing field. And for a change for Temple, it's not an even playing field because they have some of the things that the other programs recruiting the kid don't have, just from a facility standpoint, conference standpoint, all that. So.
Before we get into a couple mailbag questions here, again, I know things are fluid. We say this in this business all the time, but as of now, Temple's full for 2024. Now, granted, there could and probably will be some roster movement, but as of now, they can essentially start really, really looking more at 2025, 2026. So if you were to grade their, these two signings, Dillon Battie and Aiden Tobiason for Adam Fisher for his first full recruiting class, I mean, is this a good start for him in your estimation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's still, I mean, as you mentioned, a TBD just with the nature of recruiting, like that. I would expect this class will look different by the time it's all said and done.
Right.
And that's not any inside information. That's not. It's just there'll probably be a transfer or two added on top, and the odds are that'll probably be more impactful towards Temple next season than either of these two guys are going to be. But from a high school standpoint, no. I mean, I think it's an exciting place to start building from for them. I really do. I think it's two guys who, like I said, both have things that they can bring to the table immediately. Dillon especially. Aiden, it wouldn't shock me even if he were to come in redshirt, just from a physical standpoint. Again, that's not like sourced. It's just something that I could see making sense for both parties. But if he does need to play, he's a lengthy 6'5" kid who knows how to play and can maybe shoot 40% from three. And Dillon, just like I said, being arguably the best athlete in the conference from the day he walks in, you have guys who can come in and play right away. And then you also just, I mean, have guys that you're going to be able to continue to develop and continue to keep working with, guys that are pretty unselfish, guys that are pretty easy to play with. So they don't limit who else you need to be recruiting from a style of play standpoint. And just both talented kids, both kids that I grade out right on or near. Aiden probably right on a borderline high major level, and Dillon is a legitimate high major player. And right now, the reality is, I know a lot of fans are going to be upset about it, but players with those grades are hard for Temple to recruit right now. And so to land two of them and to get it done in a week, pretty much, I think it's a really good place to start, kind of going into the transfer season.
So we have a couple mailbag questions here for you. These are screen names from the basketball message board at owlscoop.com. First screen name here is Temple22. Question here: where do we stand with some of the 2025 targets? Do you see us in a good spot with any of them? So he's referring to guys like KJ Cochran at the Perkiomen School, Matt Gilhul and Kai Shinholster at Penn Charter, Cam Wallace at Westtown, Devin Booker at Cristo Rey, Keyshawn Tillery as well, a guy from outside of the area, and a couple other guys as well. But I mean, those are some of the main names. Again, each of these guys has his own timeline for his recruitment, but I'll start first. I mean, like, again, all these guys are good players. You saw them a lot over the summer, and we talked to you about them in July. But where do they stand? Where does Temple stand with them? We know that they're recruiting all of them. But in your estimation, I mean, I know it's always the question, or one of the questions that fans ask you, like, how gettable are these guys for Temple? I mean, I don't think they're going to do a clean sweep of all these players. If they did, that would be
certainly not.
Yeah,
There'd be some unhappy guys on the current roster if that were to happen. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how that scholarship count would go, but but I think they're in an interesting spot because and this is sourced, I guess. But I mean, I know when they got the job, and when Fish got the job, he wanted to be really intentional of recruiting the 2025s as though that they were 2024s. having
Mhm.
very little idea of what exactly his 24 class is going to look like, having such little idea of what his current team looked like to know what his 24 class would have to look like. It was easy to at least hit the ground running from a recruiting standpoint to be like, all right, we at least know who by 2025, it's not going to matter what we have now. We just want to be involved with the best players, and especially the best players in this area. And they were able to do a good job getting a head start on that. So all the guys that you just mentioned, I think are guys that before we get to how gettable, they're all guys that I think would genuinely be good gets and impactful gets for Temple.
Right.
So that's the first thing is the identification and the initial building of the relationship, which even in an NIL space does still matter. And now's the part that I think Temple fans are probably pretty familiar with, which is like you still kind of just got to wait and wait and see. You know, there's a lot of high majors that have been in to see KJ Cochran. I think other than Penn State and Mississippi State, maybe that none have offered. But like, I mean, you know, you got heavy hitters that are sort of swarming around, and they're going to evaluate him this season. If they're going to offer him, it would help Temple, honestly, if they offer him this season rather than waiting until the winter, and Temple can know where it stands. Fish might still want to go into a big recruiting battle with some of those schools for a kid like that, or they have a relationship with, but it also might be able to then, all right, let's shift our attention a little more to Kai Shinholster, to Devin Booker, you know, whichever kid hasn't necessarily had that blow up yet. So I think they're in a good spot where they cast a wide enough net with guys who are genuinely good players. The odds are that a couple of them are going to blow up. There's a couple of them that I think are, you know, I've graded out right now as potential top 50, top 100 players in the country. The reality is right now, those are going to be hard kids for Temple to sign, no matter where they're. And no
Who
matter
are
how
those guys? Who would you think would be in that top 50 range? I know Matt Gilhole was up for a visit at Syracuse already, right?
Yeah, no. So I'd say Matt's a kid. This is going to be a really interesting year for Matt with his reclass and transfer and reclass to change of scenery for him. And Matt's a kid I've been high on for a really, really long time. And he's definitely a kid that is still in that, has every chance to be a top 50, top 100 player. Is at a point this year where he's got to start like putting some really good games together. Now, the thing for Temple is if he does that, Matt's probably going to Syracuse or Miami or West Virginia or Virginia Tech or Penn State or wherever. If he doesn't, then Temple's still probably getting a really and Temple's able to be in the mix. They'd still be getting a really, really intriguing player. That's the thing for Temple. So I'd say, yeah, Matt's a kid who's in that mix. Two, I've been really excited about watching recently since really since the summer, KJ Cochran and Kai Shinholster. You know, and yeah, those are two that it wouldn't shock me if by the time spring AAU rolls around that they could be out of Temple's reach. But again, like those are also both like some old school kids, some old school families, kids where relationships are going to matter, and it might be something where they're able to have an honest enough conversation of, hey, no, we know we still have, a couple Power 5 offers, but Temple, you're really still in consideration. Does that mean that they're going to get the kid? No, obviously, not necessarily. Yeah, but it's an interesting position for them to be in. The other good thing is if a couple of those kids blow up, they play enough similar positions and are obviously from the same area that like. If Matt Gilhole really blows up, the odds are Justin Hauser might not, because those schools are all going to be recruiting Matt Gilhole. Or if, Kai Shinholster blows up, that might be at the expense of Devin Booker's recruitment, not at the expense of Devin Booker's development as a player. Temple would still be getting the same level of player as Devin Booker was 3 months ago. It just might be easier for them to recruit him if, KJ and Kai are getting 10 high major offers and Booker's in the background. They all play AAU together. That's why I say that. But, or it could be the opposite. And it's just the odds of all of them blowing up and getting out of Temple's reach are slim. And I think they've done a really good job laying groundwork where if they're not out of their reach, Temple's going to be an appealing option for each of those kids.
Okay, Sean Tillery, not a kid from this area, but again, you gave us a good scouting report on him back in July. What have you seen from him in that time, and why do you think Temple's still recruiting a player like him?
Yeah, so he's one that honestly, I mean, he's kind of experienced a little bit of the blow up that I might expect KJ and or Kai to go through this year. Just being up in the NEPSAC and having a really, really terrific sophomore year, reclass sophomore year in the NEPSAC last year up in New England, really put him on the map.
Jalen Ruggiero from Sidwell was on campus last weekend, right? And I guess you classify him as a legacy recruit for Temple. His mother was a Big Five Hall of Famer at Temple as a women's basketball player. Had a really good junior season. I think he dislocated his kneecap. And,
sophomore season. He's a 2025.
Oh, so, excuse me. Yes. Meant to say sophomore season. Had an injury in their title game last year, but he's recovered from that since then. Have you had a chance to see much of him?
Yeah, unfortunately, not as much in the last.
Because I was going to ask, like, how much he was able to play in the summer as he was recovering from that injury.
Yeah, so if I remember right, he was definitely back by like May, definitely by June in those the high school live periods with Sidwell. Mm-hmm. Sidwell only played in one of the two live periods. By the time he got back, his team takeover team was so loaded. No, they didn't end up winning Peach Jam, but they made like the Final Four or Elite Eight, and we're almost undefeated most of the way through. And honestly, just for Jay, like I don't want to pick on the kid. I'm not picking on the kid. He's a really good player, but he was just clearly not in shape just from coming off his injury. But still wearing a big brace. He's a kid that's got a little bit of a bigger body. Naturally, just looked like he, hadn't been able to be on his. He looked like a kid who hadn't been able to be on his feet for a few months, and definitely hadn't been able to be on the court for a little while. But as a kid that, as a player, as a talent, I'm still really excited about. And again, unless I see that start to linger into the season once he's healthy, I have no reason to be concerned based on what I saw this summer. I mean, he's similarly just a recent Adam Fisher guys. He's got some Miles Dread to his game. Played at Penn State. Ended up really playing anywhere from like the 1 through the 4 for Penn State. Similar body type, whereas Jalen's probably about 6'5", but little rounder, little thicker body, just naturally really strong and muscular, but can still move, can still really get off the ground, jump and finish above the rim, to really make shots. Kid that, I mean, I have graded out, again, dismissing some of what he, not being able to put his best foot forward this summer. I definitely have graded out as a high major player and somebody that would be an exciting get for Temple. But again, one that just from being hurt and being on the team he was on, like, isn't necessarily in the lexicon right now in the way that some of his other counterparts are in the class, who honestly he might be better than. So it's one, it's a nice opportunity for Temple to really, get in there and see if they can form a relationship. See, I don't know if his mom would cares about him playing at Temple or not, but see if she does, and kind of go from there, while things might have cooled down a little bit for him on the recruiting front. That could, again, you've stressed how fluid things are. Like Sidwell plays a national schedule, that could change in 3 weeks if he looks back to, back to himself. But for right now, no. I mean, it's one that I think, if you ask me right now, it's gettable, and one that will be a really exciting get.
One more mailbag question here before we close things out. I got a couple questions for you about some 2026 guys. Mailbag question that we got, I thought I would float your way, is the screen name is TU1834. Question is, what should we look for in Zion Stanford's development to build on his showing from Monday night? So it's one game. Zion came off the bench, but played really well against the Maryland Eastern Shore team. I know it was a huge shocker. It put a dent in whatever resume Temple had at that point when they lost to Maryland Eastern Shore, but that Maryland Eastern Shore team actually turned out to be fairly decent. This is a mostly new roster, but nonetheless, they pretty much did what they were supposed to do against them. Zion played a little bit more than 20 minutes off the bench, goes 7 for 10, had 14 points, played a really composed game, and it looked like he was playing with good body control, getting to the rim. Right before we started talking, you mentioned it looks like he's in pretty good shape. I know you didn't get a chance to see the whole game, but you saw Zion Stanford when he was at West Catholic. Again, it's one game. They're playing Navy in the Veterans Classic. Their schedule will start to get tougher as these weeks go on. But in terms of a debut, from what you saw from him at West Catholic last year, playing some decent minutes, what do you think's next for him in his development? And did you expect him to play 20 minutes in the opener?
The only reason I could somewhat say yes was just because of some of what I've been hearing throughout the fall, and I mean, even going back to the summer, just about how excited they were about him and how ahead of schedule that he was, based on the player that they thought they got. And that's when, where I'll be honest, I mean, when they started recruiting and eventually signed him, like, having watched Zion a lot, I wasn't positive that he was somebody that was going to be able to impact, certainly not right away. And I ultimately thought he might just end up being more of a program kid. When you looked at the development, though, I mean, what I think they were sold on when they recruited him was just how much better the kid had gotten. He'd been on the map, so it's not like an Aiden Tobiason, but looked like a different player by AAU going into his senior year than he ever would have, as a sophomore, let alone even then by throughout his senior year. And then fast forward to what he looked like now. I think that's the exciting part from a development standpoint, is regardless of what the actual skill set developments are, just that general trajectory that he's been on is really, really exciting, going back about probably like 2.5 years. That he's just kind of been on this consistent upswing and really just changing what he is as a player. And so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned first, he looked like he's in great shape. Just looked like I haven't seen Zion in person since he left West Catholic, but definitely just looked a little bit almost like he grew, which is hard to tell from TV, but definitely looked slimmed out. And he always kind of just had some awkward baby fat on him that looked like would be pretty easy to convert to muscle. I didn't see how trim. I didn't expect him to be looking nearly as trim as he looked when I turned that game on. I'd say the biggest marker just for his development, that's going to be the first thing that I think, especially knowing what Fish wants to do, that they're going to address. It's just that he didn't take any threes. So I think it's an easy place to start. I don't know if that's something that they right now want him doing in games or what. But it's someone who shot the ball a little bit in high school, and specifically as a senior and that 17U summer really started to make an uptick as a shooter. And it's always going to be different stepping out to the college line and just playing against longer athletes. The margins are a lot slimmer. You're not open means something different at the high school level than it does at the college level. And there's an adjustment period to that. But I think that's whether it's, I don't necessarily expect it to be for the Navy game, but if it's, by conference play or certainly even just by future seasons, I think that's going to be the easiest marker for him to just be able to take a big jump. It's just being able to get confident and comfortable again in the standstill three from the college line and against college athletes.
All right, to close things out here, and again, you're listening to Ari Rosenfeld from Elite High School Scout, and again, he's always been really, really generous with his time in talking to us and educating our listeners about recruiting in the area. Wanted to ask you about a couple of 2026 players, Luca Foster from Archbishop Carroll, and then Derek Morton Rivera from Father Judge. Some of our listeners from my generation might remember his father, DJ Rivera. Tell me about those guys. Again, it's a little ways away, but two guys that are playing well in the Philadelphia Catholic League, at programs that are not typically the powerhouses, but guys that have stood out. What can you tell us about those guys?
Yeah, I mean, for my money right now, I mean, it's still super early and it's a class with a lot of parity so far. But for my money, I mean, probably the two highest level prospects in that class right in the Philadelphia area. Again, super early, just heading into their sophomore years, so that could change. But starting with Luca, Temple's offered already. I think then they just became his second offer. I think St. Joe's offered also. Kid who's going to be exciting because he's stepping up from JV last year to what's going to be a marquee scoring role for a super, super young and fun Carroll team. Like, just a sidebar for anybody listening that likes to check out local hoops. Archbishop Carroll is going to play 6 freshmen and sophomores who are all going to be probably mid to high major Division I players. They're not going to play any upperclassmen, so it's just going to be those guys you want to watch. Don't know how much they're going to win or not win, but they're going to be really fun to watch. But anyway, so Luca's going to be right at the center of that. Kid was really just was intriguing coming into high school last year, but just not quite ready for that, for varsity level, mostly from a physicality standpoint. But it's just continued to get better. He's about 6'5", almost 6'6". Looks like he's kind of growing by the day. That type of body can really make shots, can get out in transition, defends decently. It's hard to say any sophomore is a high level defender yet. But no, I mean, he's a kid that you look at right now. I mean, if he stays on the trajectory he's been on, he's got every chance to be a top 75 type kid in the country, and realistically one who's probably going to be hard for Temple to get, but one that they're involved with early. And then Derek Morton Rivera at Father Judge, and Derek Morton Rivera at Judge. I mean, you mentioned his dad, who I didn't get to watch play, but I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with DJ Rivera as America East leading scorer, and that's just, it's really easy to watch Derek play, who actually goes by Mir. So if you hear me call him Mir, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, so it's easy to watch Mir play and see that his dad was a big time scorer, because he's just a really, really natural bucket getter.
Started off with St. Joe's and then finished at Binghamton, right?
Yep. Ended up finishing at Binghamton, and I think was the leading scorer in the conference in the America East. Scored like 20 something points a game.
Yeah.
Which for anybody, I mean, that's hard to do in college. And his son's very, very similar. I can't necessarily speak to the style because I didn't watch his dad, but just a natural scorer, can put it in the bucket from anywhere. True 3-level scorer, gets it done with left hand, right hand, really, really skilled, really confident and aggressive, starting to get athletic. And what's fun, I mean, he's a younger kid for his grade. He's still super long and super skinny and baby faced, so it's going to kind of determine whether he's gettable for Temple or not. Is if he's probably like a long 6'1" right now. If he grows to 6'3", 6'4", and is doing the things he's doing from a scoring standpoint, it's going to be hard for that kid not to wind up in a Power 5 somewhere. If he stays his current size and stays not quite a point guard, then it's someone that, again, I think will probably end up having Power 5 opportunities still, but could be one that's in the realm of getting for Temple. And obviously it's one that has a ton of local ties to the basketball, the local basketball community, so I could see that appeal of staying close potentially being something that would come into play down the line.
All right, great stuff as always. A lot of our loyal listeners know where they can find your work, but for those who are listening to you for the first time, where can they find you on social media? Any exciting stuff coming up for you?
I mean, not much exciting besides the season starting to roll around, which
I know summers are really busy, of course. But
so I mean, I'm really excited for the season. This will be, I think, season 3 officially under the Elite High School Scouting brand. I really just can't wait to get back out there. I'll be starting. First game will actually be tomorrow at Life Center Academy in Burlington. I think last year ended up getting I was just shy of 250 games for the season. Yeah, so looking forward to getting back out there. That's what's coming up. Keep up. I'm on Twitter mostly at A Rosenfeld Hoops. We'll see how much longer. X, I guess. I'm sorry. I haven't updated my phone, so I still have Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, A Rosenfeld Hoops, and you can also follow Elite High School Scouting at Elite HS Scouting. And I also got to shout out my assistant VP Tom Keller, who's at Tom Keller _ on Twitter. Keep up with any or all three of those accounts, and you'll see all that we're doing, all the gyms that we're in, all the players that we're seeing, and then Instagram as well, which we don't do as good a job of as we need to, is Elite HS Scouting as well.
Perfect. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely, buddy. Appreciate it.
Big thank you to Ari Rosenfeld. We always enjoy having him on the scoop, again, giving you guys a lot of insight into not only the players like Aiden Tobiason and Dillon Battie who signed with Temple, but the guys that they're continuing to recruit. So always appreciate having him on the show. Speaking of Temple basketball, for both programs, the men and the women, good season openers. We'll start with the men. 85-65 win over Maryland Eastern Shore. I mean, we were talking to Ari about how well Zion Stanford played. Cold shooting first half for the Owls again. We'll talk a little bit about this game. Again, they're playing at Navy tomorrow night, which I think is a winnable game for them. Navy lost 59-48 to Campbell. Johnny's going to be down there in Annapolis covering the game for us. But guys, just some general thoughts about Monday night's opener. It really didn't end up being so much of a, I think the whole, again, whoever thought we'd be talking about a revenge game for Maryland Eastern Shore, but again, that was a bad loss for Temple at the time last December. I mean, I've got a couple of big picture takeaways that for as much big picture-ish stuff as you can have after one game. But again, an 85-65 win. They played much better in the second half. They were up by 31 at one point before Maryland Eastern Shore scored some late buckets to get it down to within 20. But what did you guys think? Did you expect them to not just win the game, but play to the comfortable margin that they had, or did you expect the game to be closer because there are so many question marks with this team? What were your thoughts from the game?
I don't think I really, and I don't know if this comes off a little
I didn't
too
have
much.
thoughts.
Well, no, I always have thoughts all the time. I think the biggest takeaway for me that I really didn't expect, I didn't really care about the result going into the game. I cared about what we saw on the floor in terms of confidence, comfort, what open looks are they getting, are they creating? And I think my biggest takeaway was just the confidence and the comfort level part of it. Like, the way that they interacted on the court, they were having fun.
Yeah.
Like, they were enjoying each other as teammates, and it was a lot less, ISO. It happened a couple times. Like,
Sure.
Let me just get my open shot. But a lot of it was, I think, boiled down to Coach Fisher on the sideline, fist pumping in the first part of the first half at a made layup or little things like that. We saw Hysir Miller throw down a dunk in traffic. I couldn't think of wording. This massive slam that his teammates got excited for. Everybody was on press row, at least, was like, oh my goodness, who is this guy? Like, he looked confident as ever. Jaleel White looked as confident as he maybe ever has in a cherry and white jersey.
Six career
Double-double.
double-double, 15 points, 14 rebounds, 2 blocks as well. Also played well.
Right, and we didn't even see what Steve Settle could do fully, because on the offensive end he kind of struggled a little bit. Matteo Piccarelli didn't have as good as a game. His shots weren't falling as much. This wasn't even their sort of full potential as a team, and I think there are a lot of positive takeaways. And granted, like you said, who would have thought Maryland Eastern Shore would be a rivalry game at this point, when Temple was beating Houston and all this other stuff. And you can't take much away from the result, but you can take away what you saw from the team, from Zion Stanford, who we talked about with Ari. I just think there was a lot of positives in that message, and that makes you feel good as a Temple fan.
No, you hit the nail on the head with literally everything that you said.
Thanks, man.
I think yeah, you can't really take much from the actual result, and you can't look into the stats too much. But I think just being there, watching them play, I think you saw a lot of good things, and like Declan mentioned, I think Fisher and his presence has kind of brought out what Hysir and Jaleel you didn't see last year from them, and I think that's really important. And even Shane Dezzoni, he looked pretty good in the minimal time that he was on the floor, and I think that while Steve Settle, his offensive performance might have been disappointing, on the defensive end and on the boards, he was still really present and there. And I think there's things to be excited from him as well. So I think moving forward, I think you'd like to see a little bit more from him offensively, and as well as Matteo Piccarelli. But I think it's just a little bit of gelling together, and I think seeing Hasir and Jaleel the way that they played confidently, I think is a really good sign.
Yeah, nine rebounds and 2 steals for Steve Settle. He shot just 1 of 7 from the floor. A couple of things that stood out to me was just really how, and they used this word, how connected they were at the defensive end in the first half, because, I mean, both teams shot really, really poorly in the first half. UMES was 10 of 33 in the first half. Temple was 9 of 28. And then in the second half, Temple shot 53% from the floor, and their shooting got a lot better. But in the first half, again, I totally get that they get more time than they have in years past to work together in the summer now. But for all the new faces that they brought in, Steve Settle, Sam Hoffman, Matteo Piccarelli, Zion Stanford, Shane Dezzoni, Taj Thweet. Well, Taj was practicing with them last year. Quante Berry got some like minute and 40 seconds at the end of the game, but a lot of new faces, and they were communicating on defense. I think my overall takeaway, and I wrote about this for the story that we had Tuesday morning, was, again, it's one game. They should beat Navy tomorrow. Drexel and we have a mailbag question about this. Who's a better opponent in the pod to get to the Big Five? The first place Big Five game. But the schedule will eventually get tougher, and you can't make much out of one game. But I will say this, that the vibe around the program is different. And I will say this too. I still think that Aaron McKee is a hell of a basketball coach. He's a terrific, terrific person. I think I've said this before. I think Aaron just might have been more cut out to be a college basketball coach in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think Adam, and again, like, this will be tested, of course, for him. And I've asked him about this when we had him on the pod, and I talked to him in a one-on-one setting. How do you strike that balance between being positive, being fun, being uplifting, and at the same time not allowing the team to walk all over you? And again, there were times, like, even late in the game, I think, like, I'm really picking on somebody here, like Deuce Roberts got in late, and he said to him, "Wake up," because I think he had a turnover, but he's still a high intensity guy. But I think as of now, carries himself with the persona of a modern day college basketball coach. He is fun. He is upbeat. He's positive. He really embraces, like, trying to brand the program. Even just, again, these don't necessarily win ball games for you, but a couple of things relating to Zion Stanford that you guys were there for. Zion, I forget what part of a question he was answering, and he kept saying, he said, "For real, for real."
It was a couple questions.
Yeah, and then Fish puts his hand on his shoulder. He goes, just to clarify, when you say for real, that means that you're for real? And he goes, "Yeah." And the whole room broke up in laughter. Like, that's sort of like, again, he has not won the games he's won, but it reminded me of, like, something that Jay Wright would do in a press conference with his Villanova players. And look, Jay would get on his players. He's won 2 national championships. Adam's not in that realm yet, of course. But he seems to have that approach where he can be tough on guys but still connected to them. And then there was that anecdote that he shared about team gets into the Liacouras Center for shoot-around. He said, somebody said, "Where's Z? Get Z." And Zion Stanford thought that the shoot-around was over at the practice facility. I asked Matteo Piccarelli about this too. He was like, "Yeah, he was getting shots up over there. It's not like he was purposely missing it." Once he realized he was in the wrong place, he ran over, and Adam said, like, I had 2 choices there, and I'm paraphrasing this. He's like, I could have said, "How could you not have known that we were over here?" And he could have made it like this dark cloud hanging over him for the rest of the day. He's like, "Tie your shoes up, catch your breath, let's watch some film, let's get ready for this game." I'm not saying that single conversation sparked him to a 14-point game, but I think so far Adam has a good feel for how you have to manage younger players in 2023. Again, I'm still not seeing anything that tells me they're going to be an NCAA tournament team, but for the most part, they did what they were supposed to do in game 1 of the season. Jordan Riley, I've been told, has been practicing with the team. He didn't play Monday night. They didn't need him. But a guy that is a nice sign that they were able to win by 20. They were up by 31 at one point without a guy that they're going to be counting on a lot this season at both ends of the floor. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. So I think he's at least a possibility to play against Navy tomorrow night. I think they can beat him. They can beat Navy without him, but we'll see. And then, of course, we had, before we get into a little bit of football here and then the mailbag to close things out, Diane Richardson squad. Again, they're playing Georgetown tonight. Pod's going to come out after that game, but I mean, they just really, really, really just apologize for the iMessage I got there, that ping that you're hearing in the background. Really did, if you're talking about doing what they needed to do, what a team needs to do, I mean, they really just completely dominated Delaware State. Of course, they're going to play better teams starting with tonight, but you guys covered that game. You know that program pretty well. They did what they were supposed to do. It's not like they let them hang around. That was a dominant effort from start to finish. What did you guys think?
Yeah, if you don't know now, you know. I mean, that's the equal opportunity offense was on full display. They had 8 scorers in double figures, and that's like unreal. You know, just imagine like, you know, you're tired, you're somebody's starters, and you come off, and all of a sudden you've got a scorer right behind you that can go in and get the same amount of points that you're getting. Like that's unbelievable. That feels like a cheat code in today's college basketball. You know, that especially with how it's getting almost more toward the NBA, where you have like 5 different players that are going to play most of the minutes, and maybe you have 6 or 7 people coming off the bench. They had 12 players check in, and all 12 scored. Like that's, I don't know. I feel like that's unheard of in this day and age. And granted, like you said, you know, competition, but that also means they didn't take their foot off the gas. Like this is a competitive team. This is a team that's going to match up with anybody that's put in front of them. There was a bit of unselfishness. It felt like, you know, any open pass was being made. Like there was nobody forcing shots at any point. It was always trying to find the best opportunity to score. It was multiple levels too. The front court played well, which was like not a shock because they had the talent, but like it was crazy to see, you know, them go up and get rebounds and be able to play in the post because they just hadn't been able to do that last year as much as, you know, as Coach Rich wanted to. I mean, she said she used to dread when teams would put in their bigs. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they've got Rain Tucker who can go in and be, you know, more physical, more powerful. You've got Jaleesa Molina, the freshman, coming off the bench and, you know, leading the team in points in her first game, not only at the collegiate level, in the United States. Like, there's a lot to be excited about in this program. And I think that, you know, there's so much coming together for this team. And it's really going to be cool to watch over this season.
You mentioned a lot of things coming together. I mean, what about some of the developments that have happened with some of the players we saw last year? I mean, Tiara East looked like a completely different person. Player. And
it was crazy.
Coach Rich sat here in this office and talked about how her confidence has gained, and she said it, that she's going to look like a different player, and that's exactly what happened. Enos Piper, who struggled at times last year, came out and led the team in rebounds with 11.
That was the first time she ever scored double-digit points. And the cherry and white.
And when I heard that stat, I was shocked because it looked so easy for her. The way she was able to go out there on the boards, get 6 offensive rebounds, and just keep possessions alive. It was amazing to watch. And this is a team that I know me and you were both excited about to watch and cover because we had saw last year the potential that they had, and now they actually got a chance to see it, and that they actually went out and did it and scored 109 points. It was fascinating.
Awesome. It was
awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, Delaware State completely overmatched. It's a game that they were supposed to win, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do and then some. So again, once you're listening to this on Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Temple will have played Georgetown because we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. But I wanted to talk a little Temple women's hoops as well. There's some stuff in the mailbag, of course, that we'll get to in a few moments. I'll talk briefly about this Temple football team. Finally got back in the win column. They beat Navy 32-18. They traveled down to Tampa this Saturday to take on USF. I believe Temple's a 7-point underdog in that game. But real quick, guys, just some big picture takeaways from the win over Navy. Temple improved to 3-6, their first conference win. An interesting game in that they won despite committing 4 turnovers, 2 A.J. Warner interceptions, 2 fumbles. But they pulled away in the second half. And again, this isn't as good a Navy team as we've seen from years past, but there were some signs of life there. What stood out to you guys from last Saturday's win, other than, E.J. Warner put up big numbers. I think one of the most impressive things is the way the defense played. But what did you guys take from last Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, we sat here in the same office and said they probably wouldn't win this game, and I'm
wrong, and I was right.
I will tap the chest on that one. It didn't look like you were going to be right there for a little bit, but that was my key takeaway: is that they talked about facing adversity. I know at least Jordan McGee had said that, facing adversity and reacting to a bad situation, and it almost was. They go up 17-0, then they give up 15 unanswered, and all of a sudden Navy's back in the game, and it's like that's the third phone call you've gotten over this podcast, and it's like all of a sudden,
I can't help it, guys. I'm kind of popular,
and it's all of a sudden it's a 2-point ball game, but instead of like getting bogged down in any mistakes or trying to get caught up in the moment, they responded really well, and they went out and they took care of what they had to do. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. The run defense looked good in the first half, and then you could just tell they got winded, which I think was part of that 15-0 run. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway probably is just how well they were able to bounce back when it looked like they almost didn't. And you take that into the final 3 games of the season, they're still technically bowl eligible. So anything could happen any given Saturday/Friday.
And I think you're 100% right. I think the way they faced the adversity was really a big takeaway. And I think also just how much the defensive line has struggled this year, and then the way they were able to come in and be disciplined. I mean, Jordan McGee gave all credit to the defensive line for how well they played and how disciplined they were with their eyes and able to keep communicating and not have any missed assignments. I think that was one of the key things as well for why the defense played so well. That was one of my main takeaways.
Yeah, you don't always see your defensive line make some of the stops the Temples did against Navy. It's common for them to get 3 or 4 yards on a fullback dive and all the stuff, the misdirection stuff that they do. But the defensive line played pretty well, and again, to hold them to 144 yards of rushing, I think Zach said this in his preview. I think I might have said it last week on the pod. If you held them to 200, 250 yards rushing, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just what they do. And I think I wrote this in my story. They were following the script, build an early lead, and then they kind of like metaphorically just crumpled up into a ball and started throwing the game away. But learning how to win again, like that's something that Al Golden had to reinstill. It's something that Matt Rule had to reinstill. You love the flip the switch thing.
It just popped into my head. Had to do it.
You have to look it up and see if there's anything about it on YouTube. If you can actually see it. But they needed a win in the most obvious way. But they almost kind of needed to be shaken up a little bit and just not let everything go to crap, because that game almost did get away from them. And and they pulled away. Obviously, no kidding statement of the week. EJ Warner being back obviously really, really helped the offense. But I was really
it's a bold take. Sorry,
really bold take. But the way the defense played was encouraging. And so now you look at Saturday's game down at USF. They score a lot of points. They give up a lot of points. And they really, really, really got into a shootout with Memphis, hung in there with them. They should be able to move the ball on USF. The question is if they can play well enough against Byron Brown. I mean, he's really a very good dual-threat quarterback who can give them issues, can run the ball, can throw it. He's a redshirt freshman. He's going to be a challenge for them. I asked Stan this question on Monday, and I think he said there are some things that can translate. Again, Navy's an outlier in terms of how they play offense and how they play defense. But if you're coming off of a game where your eye discipline is good and you did a good job in stopping the run, then maybe, just maybe, there's something to build on there in terms of how you have to defend a quarterback like Byron Brown. Again, last week in their game against Memphis, he completed his first 13 passes, went 31 of 39 for 357 yards, 5 touchdowns, 100 yards on 23 carries. He's really good. Sean Atkins is his best receiver. He's already got 639 yards and 4 touchdowns and 60 catches. He's been on the smaller side. He's about 5'10", 170 pounds. Offensively, they're going to be a challenge. And again, it's absolutely not an apples-to-apples comparison in terms of defending Navy's triple option versus defending what USF does. But again, there's just something to be said for, like, they won. They were able to go in the locker room and celebrate. From what you saw against Navy, just in terms of them responding, not letting adversity get in the way, they kind of shut things down, they pull ahead and win. Did you guys see anything last Saturday that would lead you to believe that they can go down to Tampa and win this game?
Maybe just the response.
Mm-hmm.
And the offense played well as well. But I don't know. I'm very hesitant because this team has struggled all year, and it's not easy. Like it's very much not easy to defend Navy. But if you only really have to focus on the one thing, maybe it's a tad bit easier to game plan than in other weeks when you have more of a threat from offenses that are going to pass the ball more frequently. But I do think
Xavier Arline hit him for a couple late passes.
Well, that's true, and that's almost kept them in the game at times. But like, I just think I think the response is the biggest thing. Them being able to bounce back and get out of their own heads, seemingly, is big, and that would probably be the biggest factor into whether or not they can compete. Not compete in this game because I think they'll compete, but actually go out and win the game.
I agree. I think the response was really big, and you had mentioned the eye discipline and something the defense could build off of. But I think for me, one of the other things is the way they were able to get the tight ends involved. It seems like any time that this offense gets the tight ends involved with David Martin Robinson, the offense plays well and the team plays well. And I feel like if you can go down to USF and you can get the tight ends involved in the offense and have them playing well, I feel like that could give Temple a chance and the offense to score a lot of points and come out of there with the win.
Prediction time, guys.
Oh, Johnny, you're the birthday boy. You go first.
I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game, and I also think it'll be very close. I'm going to say 41-38 Temple.
Predicting a Temple win.
45-42 USF. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to predict 45-35 USF. I agree. Just cutting things off before it could get worse. That is a mental barrier that teams need to get over. I'm not sure yet that they're capable of doing it a couple weeks in a row. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. There's a really good quarterback they're facing. In some ways, it's not to say that Jalen McMurray and now, we should mention that Alex Odom is now wearing number 31. Stan said he's got some personal stuff to work out, but he was not playing at safety, so it was Dominic Hill and why am I Jesus? Who's the other safety? My goodness. From
Taiwan
Colorado.
Francis.
Yeah, Taiwan Francis. My goodness.
Pop quiz.
My brain's fried.
Pop quiz.
But, like that secondary is going to be tested in a way that they weren't last week. I totally, again, could see it being a really, really high-scoring game again. But I don't know. Maybe they will surprise some people. Again,
Maybe.
They're still technically, they have to win out to become bowl eligible 6-6. They would have to win at USF, win at UAB, but then winning the day after Thanksgiving against Memphis, a really good Memphis team, is going to be tough. But we'll see how things go for them down in Tampa. Let's close things out with the mailbag here. Got a few good questions. The first one, this is from the Owl Scoop message board. The screen name is TJ Clark. TJ Clark's question is, any chance Demeric Morris gets back on the field before the end of the year? Do we know if anything is up with Leighton Jordan? Has Mahim McCargo played? I don't think I'd seen or heard his name. Are you hearing anything about the possible commitment? Staff seems to be offering more JUCO recently. We'll talk about that. That's in someone else's question about junior college players. Interestingly enough about Demeric Morris, again, we were told that he was going to be out for the year back when he got hurt prior to the start of the season. I think they even have it in his Owl Sports bio that he's out for the year. But I was told today by a couple sources that he's participated in a limited basis in practice over the last 2 weeks. Didn't ask Stan about him this Monday because I didn't think there was anything to be asked about Demeric Morris, but we'll see. He would come back with 2 years to play. He got a COVID year. He hasn't used a redshirt year. He could play in these last 3 games and still redshirt. I don't want to say I don't know what the benefit is. If he's healthy enough to play and he bolsters your defensive line and you win your last 3, then it was worth it. But I don't know. It's an interesting question, TJ Clark, something that I didn't think we'd be answering at this juncture of the season, but he has been practicing. So I don't know. We'll know better. If you see him pop in the game Saturday, then we'll have something to ask about and follow up on Monday. We'll see. Do we know if anything is up with Leighton Jordan? I believe he was banged up, but yeah, he has not played as well as he has last year. I haven't talked to Stan in a little while about Leighton Jordan. We'll see. No, Mahim McCargo has not really played as much. Possible commitments, nothing impending that I'm aware of. We'll get to the junior college stuff in another mailbag question here, which is the next one from JHD722. What do the slew of JUCO offers recently suggest in your opinion? I think it's pretty simple. I mean, Stan and this staff are going into their third season next year. You can't as much in today's college football say, wait for next year, wait for next year, wait for next year. They want to make sure that the good players they do have stick around. And we've talked about this before. I mean, like, I'm not saying they're going to stop recruiting high school players, but I'm sure that when they win a game or when they're the guys watching film, they can say, we're a player away here, we're a player away there. This guy, if we could just seal off a block here or do something there. I mean, that's how they're going to have to get, I think, a little bit more of this done, because these guys are human beings. They have jobs to contend with and jobs to fight for. So I don't know that they can, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, they can't go high school heavy with this class. I don't think they're going to bring in 18, 20 high school players. They're going to need some guys that can come in and play right away, particularly on the offensive line, particularly on the defensive line. So I think it suggests that these guys are just saying, like, we need to win. We need to win sooner rather than later. We need guys that are a couple of years older. I think it's just as simple as that. This one I got a kick out of. I checked the owlscoop.com Gmail, and lo and behold, I don't know if I think this guy is trying to protect his real name. I don't know if this is his real name, but this said I would read it. So this cracked me up. Guy goes from Will from Aston on email. We got an email mailbag question. Hi, John. Big fan of the podcast. I've heard you guys talking a lot about the transfer portal recently, and it's got me thinking that maybe my wife is also in the transfer portal. She recently moved in with her sister and has been staying late at work most nights working on a, quote, big project. I just want to know why she left me. Please bring the kids back home, Susan. Oh, God, that's tremendous.
Let me pull up the Rivals page.
That
real quick.
is...
Got to do some research.
That is tremendous. That's
awesome.
Tremendous. Will,
Great email.
we're... whoever you are, wherever you are, in the heart of Delaware County in Aston, God bless you, buddy. I hope Susan comes home. Whew. That was a little 12-6 curveball for us.
Drink on Johnny at the Owl Scoop meet and greet.
Yes,
Just
yes,
for
yes.
you, Will.
God-
Just for you.
God bless you, Will.
Life sure hasn't.
Keep us
Oh.
updated.
Yeah, keep us updated, Will. Thank you, Johnny. It's very
I want to
comforting.
know what happens.
Yeah.
Bless you. Life sure hasn't.
Green Street Owl, the next mailbag question here. Getting back to the football. Right now, we have the same number of wins as last season. Assuming we win one more game, which is hardly a given, how would you evaluate the program in terms of progress? On a related note, have you sensed a different attitude or shot of energy from the team this week after last week's surprisingly somewhat convincing win? Answer the second question first. Yeah, I mean, it sounds so simple, but these guys just needed to go into that locker room last Saturday, play some music, be upbeat. So, yes, on a week-to-week basis, you don't know what this win could do for them. I mean, I think David Martin Robinson said it. He's like, I still think this is a very good football team. Again, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but they're not without talent. So, yes, I think we saw that uptick. We saw it on Saturday. We saw it on Monday during player and coach availability. So, yeah, they just needed to feel good about themselves again. The offense can see, wow, E.J. Warner's still a really good quarterback. That defensive line, again, Navy's an outlier, but they stopped some people. Assuming they can win one more game, how would you evaluate the program in terms of progress? I mean, it's hard to say. If they end up going 4-8 and that win is over UAB on the road, no, it's not the progress that they wanted. So, it's I think if they win out their last three, I think that's a hell of a turnaround. I think that would be the exact step forward that they wanted. That would give them a huge shot in the arm. But I'll ask you guys that question. If they win one more game, they go 4-8 instead of 3-9. Are you saying, oh, that's incremental progress? Or are you just sitting there saying, like, nah, it's more the same?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, you don't really base it off record at this point, because, like, either way, they're not really competing for where they want it to be. And I think we know what this team is, regardless of how these final couple games, shape out. But that's just my opinion. I don't really think like they made any leaps and bounds progress. I don't think they fell back very much. I think we talked about it last week, but injuries were a big thing here. They didn't really get to play as a full unit. I just think that there was so much outside, so many outside factors that you can't really assess correctly whether or not they took a step forward or back.
Yeah, no, I'd probably agree with you for the most part, Declan. I think it's hard to fully evaluate them when you had so many injuries. Although I will say, this is a team that they talked about being bowl eligible. They talked about winning 6 games, getting to that threshold, and it does. Even if they win 1, maybe even 2 more games, it just doesn't feel like they played like the team that they hoped they'd be and that they talked about that they were going to be.
Yep.
And I wouldn't say that's a step backwards, but it's sure as hell isn't a step forward.
Sure as hell. It's a good one, Johnny. No, it feels like more like treading water. Next mailbag question here to finish it out here quickly. Last 2. The first one's from Temple fan Al from our message boards. Can Temple go 2-0 in Big 5 play to play in the first place game at the Wells Fargo Center next month in December? Is Drexel or LaSalle more of a concern? It's so hard to say after one game, but those 2 teams in their opener did play head-to-head. LaSalle wins that game 61-57. They're I'd say LaSalle's probably a little bit more of a concern. Both teams have some good, solid guards in their backcourts. Jameer Brickus, Khalil Brantley for LaSalle, had a nice game in the opener. Call it bias because, we covered them, but I'd give look, Zach Spiker took Drexel to the Temple more recent to the NCAA tournament more recently than Temple has been there, so I don't want to diminish what Zach has done there. But again, LaSalle won that head-to-head matchup, so I'd say you'd say that maybe they're more of a threat. Temple, of course, is going to play at Drexel on Tuesday at the DAC, so we'll see. I don't know. I think LaSalle would get the edge there. The second part of his question was when do Temple's new basketball verbal commits plan on signing? They announced that today. So again, Dillon, Battie, and Aiden Tobiason signed their national letters of intent today, or they were announced today. And then they also announced the signings for Diane Richardson, her staff of is it Kelaine Sedano, Savannah Curry, and Adina Webster, a couple of players we talked about last week. So good week for both programs on the recruiting front. Esther Boyer, last question here. Women's basketball question, mailbag question. Have you heard any reports on how Keomi McMiller's visit went last week? What is your guess for where she ends up? And we were told by a few sources that her visit went really well. And I also continue to be told, and again, to be clear, I have not talked to Keomi McMiller, so I don't know her personally. I'm not getting this from her. People I do know who know a little bit about her have said that she's, and I can't remember if we mentioned this in the pod last week. Again, Diane Richardson cannot talk about her. But I've been told that she's a different kind of person and is not necessarily chasing offers as much. But again, I think her official visits are going to be Temple, James Madison, Ole Miss, Florida State. I don't know well enough to where she ends up. I don't have, I could try to gas you up here, Esther Boyer, and just say, I think she's going to end up at Temple. I don't have quite the handle on her recruitment to answer this. But again, we keep going back to this. I think Temple's got a chance. I think if you listen to Diane Richardson on the podcast with us last week, you can see how relatable, how charismatic she is. I think it's a good sign that they brought her in for an official, that they were able to get her in for an official, that she was here for an unofficial. I could say, hey, she'll end up at a Power 5, and that's my guess. But again, I continue to be told she's a different type of recruit. I don't know that anybody that I've talked to has said she's definitely leaning this way or that way, but I don't know if I have a solid guess as to where she ends up. But that'll do it for this week. Big happy birthday again to our buddy Johnny Swislak.
Thank you.
Big thank you to Ari Rosenfeld for joining us again on The Scoop. We'll have much more basketball content for you guys next week. Thanks for joining us for another episode, and we'll talk to you soon.